When the third and final boarding call for flight AF1145 to Paris echoed through the terminal, I pressed the go live button on my phone screen. The viewer count in the top right corner began to skyrocket, from a few hundred to several thousand, then tens of thousands. It all took less than 10 seconds. I aimed the camera at my own face, slightly pale, but surprisingly calm. Then, I slowly raised the document in my hand, already bearing a signature and an official notary stamp. Hello. My name is Anna Caldwell. My voice, cutting through the airport noise, reached the livestream viewers with clarity. Before I fly to another country to start a new life, there is something I believe everyone should know. I unfolded the document so the camera could clearly capture the 3 bold words at the top. Divorce agreement. The livestream chat exploded. Comments flooded in a continuous stream, almost impossible to decipher. Only endless exclamation points and questions flashed by. I shifted the camera, focusing on another key piece of information in the agreement. On the line for the husband's signature, a bold scrawl read, Michael Sterling. The date was 3 days ago, and on the wife's signature line, under my name, Anna Caldwell, the ink was still fresh. I had signed it this morning. That's right. Mr. Michael Sterling, CEO of the Sterling Group, and I are ending our 5-year marital relationship. I spoke slowly, making sure every word was crystal clear. The reason for the divorce is very simple. I paused, and as the comments erupted with wild speculation, I pulled another phone from my purse. It was an old device, a repository of all the evidence of my self-deception over the past year. I opened the gallery, selected a photo, and held it up to the camera. The shot was slightly blurry, obviously taken in secret, but anyone could recognize at a glance the man tenderly supporting a heavily pregnant woman, guiding her into the discreet VIP entrance of Lenox Hill Hospital. It was Michael Sterling, whose face frequently graced the covers of business magazines. And the woman clinging to him, stroking her noticeably rounded belly, who was she if not his executive assistant, Jessica Hayes? The date on the photo was clearly visible, 6 months ago. My husband of 5 years, my voice remained steady, a strange note of amusement even creeping in. While I was managing our home, caring for his mother, and sacrificing my own career, he was escorting his mistress to her routine prenatal checkup. The number of viewers surpassed 500,000. The system even froze for a moment due to the massive influx of people. And as for today, I glanced at the huge electronic departures board in the airport. My flight status had changed to final call. Right now, at this very minute, as I stand here speaking to you, my dear husband, Mr. Michael Sterling, is likely in the most expensive private suite in the maternity ward at that same hospital in the heart of Manhattan, holding his mistress's hand and awaiting the birth of their child. Oh, and one more thing, I said as if suddenly remembering something. I brought up an audio file and pressed play. Through the recording static, a woman's low moan was heard first, followed by Michael's voice, more anxious and tender than I had ever heard it. Jessie, honey, don't be scared, I'm right here. Doctor, get in here. My wife is having a baby. The recording was short, less than 10 seconds, but it was enough. That call came to our home landline by mistake half an hour ago from Mr. Sterling's assistant. I suppose he was in such a hurry, he dialed the wrong number. I stopped the recording and looked at the comments, which had now gone completely wild, and the virtual gifts flooding the screen. The last bit of color drained from my face, leaving only an icy resolve. So, this divorce agreement is my little gift to my husband, his new wife, Miss Jessica Hayes, and their future child. I wish their family of 3 a swift and shared ruin, so they don't spoil anyone else's life. As for me, I wish to escape this hell and find a new, happy life. I looked into the camera and smiled, the first genuinely light smile in 5 years. Goodbye, Michael. And I don't mean see you later. With that, I decisively ended the broadcast. The world instantly became much quieter. Only the airport announcements and the thud of my own heart, loud as a drumbeat, remained. I removed the SIM card from the old phone, snapped it in half, and threw it, along with the phone, into the nearest trash receptacle. I carefully folded the original divorce agreement and tucked it into an inner pocket. Then I picked up my suitcase, turned, and walked toward the boarding gate, never once looking back. At that same moment, outside the maternity ward of the private hospital in Manhattan, Michael Sterling irritably loosened his tie, staring at the closed door. From behind it came Jessica Hayes' intermittent cries, which made his heart clench, but also filled him with an inexplicable sense of anticipation. His mother, Eleanor Sterling, sat on a nearby bench, her fingers restlessly toying with a string of pearls as she muttered something under her breath. It was unclear whether she was praying for the safe birth of her grandchild or cursing Anna, That barren woman who occupied the space and refused to leave. Michael, I'm so scared. Jessica's tearful cry came from behind the door again. Don't be scared, Jessie, I'm right here, just outside. Michael immediately stepped forward, his voice, full of a tenderness he himself didn't notice, reaching her through the door. A tenderness Anna had rarely known in 5 years. It was at that exact moment that his personal assistant, Victor, his face ashen, ran up to him, holding a phone as if it were a bomb. He even forgot his usual greeting. Mr. Sterling, sir, we have a huge problem. Michael frowned and looked at him, annoyed. What's the panic? Can't you see what's happening here? Victor, drenched in a cold sweat, simply shoved the phone in Michael's face. It's your wife, Anna. She's at the airport, she just did a live stream. The entire internet is blowing up. On the screen was a recording of the broadcast. Frozen at the moment, Anna held up the divorce agreement, saying in that eerily calm voice of hers, Mr. Michael Sterling, CEO of the Sterling Group, and I are ending our 5-year marital relationship. Michael's pupils constricted sharply. He snatched the phone and scrolled down with trembling fingers. Then he saw the secret photo, heard the damned audio recording. Anna's pale, but smiling face was like a knife of ice shards plunging into his eyes and his heart. How dare she? Michael hissed through his teeth. His face turned a deathly gray. Veins bulged on his temples. He, Michael Sterling, in his 30-something years, had always been in control. Never before had he been made a public laughingstock like this, especially not by the ever meek and obedient Anna, who had skinned him alive and put his bones on display for all to see. The broadcast was over, but the comment sections, the social media reshares, the search engine trends, everything was already blazing red. Number Sterling cheats, number Anna Caldwell, number live stream divorce, number Sterling Group scandal. Within minutes, breaking and viral tags appeared next to these topics. His personal phone began to vibrate nonstop. The names of board members, business partners, and journalist acquaintances flashed on the screen, but most were unknown numbers. She's lost her mind, completely lost it. Eleanor Sterling had also come over and saw what was happening. She was so furious, she dropped her pearls and hissed, "That witch. She wants to ruin our family, to ruin Michael. Quick, bring her here. Make her delete everything. Make her apologize." Michael violently threw the phone to the floor. The loud crash momentarily silenced even the cries from the delivery room. Victor flinched and didn't dare to pick up the now shattered device. Michael's chest heaved. His mind was in chaos. Rage, shock, and a hint of fear he wouldn't admit even to himself swirled together. Anna, the woman who was always in the kitchen, the living room, by his mother's side, always so quiet and submissive, how could she do this? Didn't she love him to the point of self-annihilation? How could she survive without the Sterling family, without him? Where is she now? Michael grabbed Victor by the collar, his eyes bloodshot. At the airport, based on the background, JFK International Terminal, the departures board showed. It might be flight AF1145 to Paris. Departure at 10:45 a.m. It's probably about to take off, the terrified Victor stammered. 10:38 a.m. Michael snapped his head up, looking at the digital clock in the hospital corridor. 10:38. 7 minutes left. Get the car. To JFK. Right now, immediately, Michael roared and, turning, bolted for the exit. Michael, where are you going? Eleanor cried out. Jessica is in labor. Your son is about to be born. Mom, you stay here, he yelled back over his shoulder without stopping, his voice hoarse. I have to find her. He had to. He couldn't let Anna just leave. Not like this. She had destroyed his reputation, torn the veil from the Sterling family, and now she thought she could just run away? She could dream on. He had to catch her, to demand what she was trying to achieve, to make her take it all back, apologize, retract everything, save the reputation of the Sterling Group. And as for Jessica and the baby? The thought flickered and was instantly drowned in an ocean of fury and the feeling of losing control. There was only one thought in his head, catch Anna. Michael burst out of the hospital like a hurricane and jumped into the just-started car, its engine still roaring. To the airport, top speed. I'll pay for any red lights you run, he snarled at the driver. The car shot forward, tires screeching on the asphalt. The entire way, Michael relentlessly dialed Anna's number. The subscriber you have reached is not in service or has been disconnected. The cold, automated voice repeated itself over and over. He ripped off his tie in a rage and threw it aside. The scenery outside blurred past at a frantic pace, but it still felt too slow. He opened his news feeds. The articles about him were already filled with mockery, condemnation, and gossip. All those glowing pieces about his successful career and happy family now served as proof of his hypocrisy. The first financial bloggers were already analyzing the devastating blow this scandal could inflict on the Sterling Group's stock. Damn it. Michael slammed his fist into the seat. The driver flinched and pressed the accelerator even harder. 10:42 a.m. The car screeched to a halt at the departures terminal. Michael leaped out before it came to a complete stop, ignoring the startled looks of bystanders, and sprinted toward the international terminal. Bulu, 3 a.m. He ran to the check-in counter for flight AF1145. It was already closed. Panicked, he rushed toward the security and passport control area, but the lines were long. He couldn't spot Anna anywhere. Anna! Anna, come out! He shouted, losing all sense of decorum, which attracted the attention of security. Sir, please calm down. Get away from me. Michael shoved away a security guard who tried to pacify him, his bloodshot eyes scanning for a familiar silhouette. That silhouette. Always dressed in muted tones, quietly following him. Now, it had vanished without a trace. 10:44 a.m. The airport announcement sounded again. All remaining passengers for Air France. Flight 1145 to Paris, your flight is now closing. Please proceed to the gate immediately. Michael snapped his head up, looking toward the jet bridge. Through the massive panoramic windows, he saw the huge airliner slowly detaching from the terminal. A feeling of losing control, unprecedented and almost desperate, washed over him. He had lost. Anna was really gone. While he was with another woman, waiting for his child, she had, with a single broadcast, nailed him and everything he had to a pillar of shame, and then gracefully exited the stage. The plane began its taxi down the runway, gathered speed, lifted its nose, and soared into the clouds. Michael stood frozen, watching as the plane grew smaller and smaller, until it became a silver dot and disappeared into the sky. He clenched his fists so tightly that his nails dug into his palms, leaving bloody crescents. Anna, you will regret this. The soft hum of the aircraft door closing sounded like a final gavel, definitively separating me from 5 years of my past. I leaned back into the plush first-class seat and closed my eyes. My fingers unconsciously toyed with the edge of the divorce agreement in my pocket. The calm and resolve I had so carefully maintained at the airport receded like a tidal wave, leaving behind a bone-deep exhaustion and a feeling of emptiness bordering on numbness. A flight attendant politely asked if I wanted a drink. I shook my head and requested only a blanket. The blanket, smelling of the dry warmth of the cabin, covered me. The plane began its takeoff roll, and I was pressed into my seat. This city, which held 5 years of my youth, my tears, my patience, and the final devastating blow, grew smaller outside the window until it was completely swallowed by thick clouds. I had finally escaped. My tense nerves relaxed slightly, but the memories I had so diligently suppressed burst free like animals from a cage and flooded my mind. It didn't start this way. 5 years ago, 25-year-old Anna Caldwell was a fairly well-known jewelry designer in her circles. Though her parents had died early and she had gotten through college on scholarships and part-time jobs, her talent and the pencil in her hand were her greatest assets. At an industry gala, I met the brilliant 30-year-old Michael Sterling, the young head of the Sterling Group, handsome, wealthy, with impeccable manners. His gaze cut through the crowd and landed on me with unconcealed admiration and a determination to win me over. Back then, if he heard I loved the night sky, he would rent out the entire Hayden Planetarium. He would stay up all night, waiting for me to finish a sketch, just to be the first to see it. He held my hand tightly in public and said, "Anna is the most gifted woman I have ever met." I thought I had found a love that would heal my childhood need for security. So, when he knelt on one knee in my small West Village studio apartment, a ring in his hand, and said, "Anna, marry me. Let me take care of you for the rest of your life," I nodded through my tears. Without hesitation, I handed him my career, my independence, and my entire future. The wedding was grand and lavish, a fairy tale dream come true for any girl. But the crack in that fairy tale appeared the very next day. On our first night in the luxurious but cold Sterling mansion on Park Avenue, my mother-in-law, Eleanor Sterling, summoned me to her private sitting room. The room was filled with the thick scent of potpourri. Eleanor, in a silk robe, sat in an expensive sandalwood armchair, still toying with her pearl necklace. She sized me up with a look that felt like a knife edge, tracing the lines of my simple dress. "Now that you've married into the Sterling family, you must abide by our rules," Eleanor began, her voice sharp and brooking no argument. Michael works very hard. All household matters, large and small, are now your responsibility. His father died early. I raised Michael alone and kept this family afloat. It wasn't easy for me. Now that you're here, these duties fall on your shoulders. I understand. Mother. I will do my best, I nodded respectfully. Humph, Eleanor sniffed. I heard you used to design some trinkets. That kind of work, where you have to be in the public eye, is no longer appropriate. The wife of a Sterling doesn't need to work for a living. We don't want people saying we're neglecting you in some way. Your job is to take care of Michael, manage this house, and, most importantly, give this family an heir as soon as possible. My fingers clenched. It was my beloved work. Something I had dedicated years to. But looking at Eleanor's unyielding expression and thinking of Michael, I silently swallowed the words, I want to keep working. Maybe it's temporary, I thought. Maybe once I have a child, things will get better. But I never expected that this was only the beginning. Michael was indeed very busy. After the honeymoon, he started coming home later and later, often with the scent of another woman's perfume on him. To my questions, he always gave the same answer. It was a negotiation, difficult clients. Don't overthink it. And he would wearily rub his temples, as if my concern were a burden. And Eleanor's rules were so petty they were suffocating. The morning oatmeal had to be cooked for exactly 2 hours, not too thick, not too thin. The flowers in her room had to be changed daily, and never ones with pollen. The furniture in the house had to be arranged according to her precise vision of order, and a deviation of even an inch would cause an uproar. Her expensive clothes and handbags had to be hand-washed or sent to a specific dry cleaner, with no room for error. I spun like a top around this house, around this mother and son. My design pencils gathered dust, my sketchbooks were stored at the bottom of a drawer. My world shrank from a wide stage to the kitchen, the living room, the laundry room, and my mother-in-law's sitting room. Michael didn't notice my changes, or rather, he didn't care. He enjoyed the perfectly organized life I created for him and the fact that his mother was being looked after, but he was stingy with a warm glance or a word of approval. Sometimes, I tried to talk to him about my loneliness, my longing, but he would always cut me off impatiently. Mom is getting older, her temper isn't easy. Just be patient with her. What's the big deal? I'm working myself to the bone out there. I just want to relax when I get home. The word patient became the leitmotif of my 5-year marriage. I thought my patience and sacrifice could earn a little sincerity, a little understanding. Until 2 years ago, when Jessica Hayes entered Michael's life as his personal executive assistant. Young, beautiful, well-educated, and fiercely ambitious. She looked at Michael, with unconcealed adoration and desire. Toward me, the boss's wife, she feigned respect, but her eyes held a clear disdain. The first alarm bell rang when I found an expensive diamond earring that wasn't mine in Michael's jacket pocket. I showed it to him. He frowned so deeply you could have pinched a fly between his brows, snatched it, and said irritably, a client must have dropped it. The secretarial staff is getting lazy. I'll have Jessica sort it out tomorrow. Jessica. He said her name so naturally. After that, the alarm bells rang more and more frequently. When his phone rang, he would glance at the screen, immediately decline the call, and step out onto the balcony to call back. The cities he traveled to for business always coincided with Jessica's social media geotags. He came home later and later, and the unfamiliar perfume on him became a constant presence. It was her favorite niche fragrance. Like a pathetic detective, I collected clues but didn't dare to rip off the bandage. I was afraid that if I did, this home, which I had painstakingly maintained with 5 years of my youth and dignity, would completely fall apart. I even clung to the pathetic hope that it was just an affair, that he would get it out of his system and come back. Until a year ago, when Jessica sent me a text with no words, only a photo. It was taken in a private room at an expensive restaurant. Michael was leaning back on a sofa with his eyes closed, seemingly asleep. And Jessica, nestled against his shoulder, was taking a selfie with a triumphant and provocative smile. In the background, an empty bottle of red wine and 2 glasses were visible. A second message immediately followed. From her. Mrs. Sterling, Michael said he's tired and won't be coming home tonight. Oh, and he looks so cute when he's sleeping. At that moment, I was sitting in the empty living room. My hands and feet went cold, my whole body trembled. Humiliation, anger, despair. These feelings nearly consumed me. With trembling fingers, I dialed Michael's number. After many rings, he finally answered. The background was quiet. Hello? His voice was full of annoyance at being disturbed. Michael, my voice trembled so much I didn't recognize it myself. Where are you? At the office, working. I told you. Is something wrong? His tone was extremely impatient. I stared at the taunting photo on my phone screen. My throat was so tight I couldn't utter a word. Nothing. I'm busy. He didn't even wait for my response and hung up. The cold dial tone hammered against my eardrums. That night, Michael never came home. And I sat on the living room sofa until morning. It was the first time I clearly realized. My marriage, my home, which I had so carefully protected, had long been rotten from the inside. The most pathetic part was that I still didn't have the courage to leave. After 5 years of social isolation, I had no income, no savings. Constant stress and exhaustion had even taken a toll on my health. Eleanor would occasionally remind me. Without our family, you are nothing. An orphan with no roots should be grateful to live a life like this. I was like a bird with clipped wings in a gilded cage, with neither the strength nor the direction to escape. The final straw that broke the camel's back was Eleanor's birthday 3 months ago. Jessica also came, as an important company employee. She wore a form-fitting red dress, her belly already slightly showing. She stood next to Michael, smiling charmingly and mingling with the guests, acting like the lady of the house. Eleanor was unusually kind to her, even praising her publicly. Jessie is such a capable and tactful girl. Not like some who just take up space and don't produce an air. The guests exchanged glances and whispered. I stood in a corner with a glass of champagne, feeling like a complete fool. Midway through the evening, I went to the restroom to touch up my makeup. Jessica followed me. The restroom was empty. Looking in the mirror, she reapplied her lipstick. Her reflection smirking at me with a winner's smile. Anna, she began slowly. You know, I almost admire you. To endure for so long. I clenched the lipstick in my hand, my nails digging into my palm. But your endurance is at its end. She turned to face me, ostentatiously placing a hand on her rounded belly. Her voice was quiet, but every word was distinct. I'm pregnant. 4 months along. Michael said that as soon as the baby is born, he'll divorce you and marry me. She stepped closer. The scent of her perfume hit me, making me nauseous. What do you think his mother will choose? A daughter-in-law who will give her a grandchild, or a barren freeloader? She smiled, her eyes full of venom. Leave on your own while you can still save some face. Otherwise, when Michael tells you himself, it will be much worse. I looked at her perfectly made-up face, at the unconcealed triumph and mockery in her eyes, at her hand protecting her and Michael's child. And the string that had been holding me together all this time finally snapped with a sharp twang. There was no cataclysm, no tears. Instead, a piercing, icy calm washed over me. It turned out that all my years of patience, sacrifice, and concessions were just a joke in their eyes, a folly to be trampled on, and discarded. I didn't cry, I didn't make a scene. I even looked at her with a chillingly calm smile. Is that so? I heard my own voice, surprisingly steady. Well then, congratulations. With that, I straightened my back and walked out of the restroom. From that day on, the weak, humiliated Anna who begged for love was dead. Only a cold-blooded avenger remained. I secretly contacted the only friend I had kept in touch with from before my marriage, David Chen, now a renowned lawyer, and began to gather evidence. Photos of Michael's affair, audio recordings, including the call his assistant mistakenly made to our house, Jessica's provocative texts, detailed expense reports from the last 5 years that were almost entirely covered by my personal savings, and even traces of potential misuse of company funds and transfer of marital assets when Michael bought Jessica real estate and luxury goods. Like the most patient hunter, I set my trap, waiting for the right moment. And this morning, David informed me that Jessica had been admitted to the hospital. She was in labor. Michael and his mother went there. I knew my time had come. After signing the long-prepared divorce agreement and packing a small suitcase, I went to the airport and, at the last moment before boarding, presented them with my carefully prepared gift. The wave of memories gradually receded. The plane flew smoothly at 30,000 feet. Outside the window, a sea of clouds stretched out, the sun shining dazzlingly bright. I opened my eyes. The last traces of confusion and pain evaporated like water droplets under the high-altitude sun. 5 years of marriage. A calculation. Sincerity thrown to the dogs. Dignity trampled. But it didn't matter. The game was just beginning. Michael, Eleanor, Jessica, everything you did to me, I will return to you in full, with interest. I took out a new phone from my purse, one David had prepared for me. I turned it on and connected to the plane's paid Wi-Fi. The screen lit up, and dozens of messages and missed call notifications poured in. Most were from unknown numbers, a few from David. I opened his latest message. Sent 5 minutes ago. Anna, I see you took off safely. It's a media storm back in the States. Everything is going according to plan. Michael is looking for you like a madman. Take care. Talk soon. I quickly typed a reply. In the air. All good. You can launch phase 2. Release the first batch of materials. After sending the message, I turned off the internet and closed my eyes again. The corners of my lips slowly curled into a cold, sharp smirk. More than 10 hours of flight, a change of time zones, and the constant mental rehearsal of my next steps finally came to an end. The plane began its descent. Through the window, the lights of a foreign city were already visible, merging into a bright but unfamiliar sea of light in the twilight. I felt no confusion, no anxiety. On the contrary, an almost cold calm enveloped me. The numbness of the last 5 years and the tension of the last few months of preparation had coalesced into a clear sense of purpose. The pilot's voice came over the intercom, announcing our preparation for landing. I switched off airplane mode. The new phone immediately began to vibrate. The sound of notifications blended into a continuous trill. I glanced at the lock screen. Besides a message from David with our meeting location, everything else was push notifications from social media and news apps. The headlines were sensational. Keywords: Sterling, affair, live stream divorce, high society scandal. Perfect. The fire had spread even more fiercely than I had anticipated. I didn't rush to read the details, quickly gathering my things, double-checking that the divorce agreement was secure, and reapplying my lipstick to make my pale face look fresher. I wanted the person meeting me, and any potential hidden observers, to see that Anna Caldwell had not left the Sterling family like a beaten dog, but with her head held high. Joining the stream of passengers, I walked off the jet bridge and into the arrivals hall. The air was a mix of different languages and perfumes. My gaze swept over the crowd of greeters, and I almost immediately saw David, standing nearby in a light gray trench coat, holding a simple sign that read Anna C. He was my senior from college and one of the few true friends I had kept in touch with. Over the years, he had become a specialist in international divorce proceedings and asset disputes, making a name for himself. Most importantly, he was trustworthy. David, I said, approaching him with my suitcase. David lowered the sign and looked me over. A flicker of relief crossed his eyes behind his glasses, but it was overshadowed by seriousness and concern. Anna, how was the flight? He took my suitcase. His voice was low. Let's get to the car quickly. Too many curious eyes here. I nodded and walked beside him to the parking garage. His car, a black sedan with local plates, was modest and inconspicuous. Once we were inside with the doors closed, we were in a relatively quiet, enclosed space. David didn't start the car right away. He retrieved a folder and a tablet from the back seat and handed them to me. Everything you asked me to track is here, David said, a note of exhaustion in his voice, but his eyes were sharp. It's been 13 hours since your broadcast ended. It's a media explosion in the States. The top 5 trending topics are all about you. I took the tablet. I didn't need to search for anything. The homepages of social media sites were plastered with the news. Anna Caldwell's livestream divorce. Ironclad proof of Sterling's affair. Breaking, Sterling Group stock plummets at market open. Shock, the rise of Mistress Jessica Hayes. Hot, Eleanor Sterling, hypocrite with pearls. New, years of humiliation for Anna Caldwell in the Sterling family. I clicked the first link. Pinned at the top was the recording of my broadcast. The number of reshares and comments was astronomical. The comments were no longer just expressions of shock, but filled with deep dives, mockery, and anger. Someone claiming to be a former Sterling Group employee revealed how Michael and Jessica had been brazen about their relationship at the office. Fashion bloggers analyzed Jessica's wardrobe over the past year, pointing out numerous exclusive handbags and jewelry items that coincided with Michael's trips and gifts. Even more interestingly, someone had dug up the dubious origins of the expensive pearl necklace. Eleanor Sterling often wore to charity events and even posted an audio clip where she boasted to her friends, "My daughter-in-law is just free help who even invests her own money to serve us." The authenticity of the recording was questionable, but it spread like wildfire. Public opinion had shifted from simple scandal-mongering to questioning Michael's morality, the hypocrisy of the Sterling family, and expressing overwhelming sympathy for me, the legal wife. Of course, there were comments like, "It always takes two to tango, it's her fault for not being able to keep her husband." But they were quickly drowned out by a flood of rational arguments and condemnation. The first batch of materials you asked me to release the family's total expenses for 5 years, covered by your premarital savings and some post-wedding income, as well as receipts for some of Eleanor's luxury items. David pointed to the folder in my hands. We anonymously published it through several influential financial and psychology bloggers 3 hours ago. Now, the hashtag number, CEO, wife, paid, the bills is trending. I opened the folder. Inside were printed graphs and documents. They clearly showed that over 5 years, I had invested an astronomical sum into the household's daily expenses, staff salaries, Eleanor's personal spending, including the maintenance of that very pearl necklace, expensive supplements, clothes, jewelry, and some vague family functions. Meanwhile, my allowance and the so-called upkeep of an oligarch's wife were laughably small in comparison. What's the reaction? I asked. Looking up. Everyone's in shock. David adjusted his glasses, his lips curling into a cold smile. Before, many people just criticized Michael for being a scumbag. Now Eleanor, who always projected the image of a benevolent mother-in-law, has been dragged through the mud. Sucking the lifeblood out of her daughter-in-law. The country's monster-in-law. She'll never wash those labels off. The official accounts of the Sterling Group and its subsidiaries are being flooded with demands for comments and apologies. Many are calling for a boycott of their products. I could just imagine how furious Eleanor must be. She valued her reputation above all else. To have it exposed like this must be worse than death for her. And Michael? I put down the tablet and looked at the passing lights of the unfamiliar city. David's face grew more serious. He's lost his mind. He's using all his connections to find out your flight information, your entry into the country. There are probably his people at major airports and train stations in the US by now. He even called me, was extremely rude, threatened to destroy my career if I didn't give up your location. He never changes, I smirked coldly. Still thinks he can solve everything with power and force. I paused. Are you safe? Don't worry, he can't touch me, David said confidently. The law firm I work for has serious backing. Michael Sterling's reach doesn't extend that far, especially not overseas. I'm more worried about you. Even though we're prepared, he has immense financial resources. He could hire local private investigators. I know, I nodded. Is the apartment ready? Ready. Completely secure. It's a vacant apartment belonging to a trusted client of mine. Tight security, respectable neighbors. You can settle in first, then we'll plan the next steps, David said, starting the car. The car moved smoothly along the road. I picked up the tablet again and opened the news about Jessica Hayes. It was even more interesting. Some dark stories from her college days had surfaced, their truthfulness questionable but described in vivid detail. An analysis of her career path. How she had undermined the previous assistant. And most importantly, someone had calculated the timeline of her pregnancy. The child was conceived while Michael was still married to me and even publicly flaunting our happy family. Now, the label of illegitimate child was permanently attached. Amidst the news, rumors were also circulating. Apparently, Jessica's delivery had been difficult. The stress from my broadcast had allegedly caused complications, and her condition was critical. Michael wasn't at the hospital at that moment. He had rushed to the airport. Only Eleanor was with her, but rumor had it the old woman was in a terrible mood and showed no joy for her newborn grandson, only cursing Jessica for bringing misfortune. Reading this, I felt nothing but a slight amusement. A dog-eat-dog fight never disappoints. The Sterling household must be in complete chaos right now, David said as he drove. The board of directors is putting immense pressure on Michael. Several partners have already paused project negotiations, demanding an explanation. Michael is desperate. They say he held several emergency meetings at the office today. The stock drop is a real blow to him. This is just the beginning, I said quietly, turning off the tablet and leaning back in my seat. The evidence of his asset transfers to Jessica's name and possible business violations. What's the status on that? We're in the final stages of verifying and strengthening the evidence, David replied. It will take some time, but the chances are high. Especially those few transfers he made through affiliated companies under the guise of consulting fees to accounts belonging to Jessica and her relatives. Those are very clean. Also, that draft letter from his computer you provided, about the schemes to bypass oversight and move funds, that's a key piece of evidence. Good. I closed my eyes, processing the information. Let them burn in the fire of public opinion a little longer. When Michael gets desperate and does something foolish, we'll play our next card. You mean? David glanced at me. I know Michael, and I know Eleanor. I opened my eyes, a glint of ice in them. Having lost so much face, they won't just sit back. Especially Eleanor. She will definitely try to save her reputation. And the only way she knows how is to slander me, or try to control me with her dirty tricks. I see, David said thoughtfully. You think they'll contact you themselves? Very soon. I said confidently. And the way they do it will probably surprise you. The car entered a quiet, upscale residential complex. After a strict security check, we stopped in front of one of the buildings. A 16th floor apartment. Great view and security. David helped me with my luggage. I'll see you up, give you the keys, access card, and some essentials. I've already stocked the fridge with some food. Thank you, David, I said sincerely. Without him, my reliable ally, my escape and revenge wouldn't have been so smooth. Don't mention it, David smiled, but the smile quickly faded, and he added seriously, Anna, this is your choice. I know you've made up your mind. But remember, Michael isn't one to give up easily. Cornered, he's capable of anything. Your safety here is the top priority. If anything seems strange, call me, or the police immediately. I understand, I nodded. I won't give them a chance to hurt me a second time. Entering the spacious, bright, minimalist but tastefully furnished apartment, I walked to the panoramic window. The view of the garden below and the distant city lights filled me with a new, slightly poignant sense of freedom. There was no critical gaze from Eleanor, no cold back from Michael, no Mrs. Sterling mask to wear. There was only me, Anna Caldwell, and the storm to come. I took my new phone, snapped a picture of the night view, and sent it to David with the caption, settled in. The view is beautiful. Awaiting the next tailwind. I knew that right now, on the other side of the world, in the city where I had lived for 5 years, some people couldn't sleep because of me. And this was only the beginning. The silence of the apartment was shattered by a sharp, piercing ring. It was one of the encrypted satellite phones David had given me. Only a few people knew the number. I was sitting at the desk, looking through more detailed materials on Michael's business connections that David had just sent. Glancing at the screen, I saw an unfamiliar international number with a US prefix. My heart skipped a beat but immediately returned to its steady rhythm. What was meant to happen had happened, and even sooner than I expected. I didn't answer right away, letting the harsh ringtone echo in the empty living room 7 or 8 times before it stopped. Soon, it rang again, the same number, with stubborn persistence. Only then did I pick up the phone and press the answer button, but said nothing. From the other end, there was first heavy breathing, then a sharp, shrill voice that I had heard for 5 years, a voice etched into my memory, lashed out at me with unconcealed anger and arrogance. Anna. You finally deigned to pick up the phone. It was Eleanor Sterling. Her voice held the same arrogance and self-righteousness, as if I were still the daughter-in-law who was afraid to breathe in her presence. I leaned back in my chair, looking at the bright but unfamiliar sun outside the window, and asked in an even tone, "Who is this?" "Stop pretending." Eleanor's voice immediately shot up an octave. Across the ocean, you could imagine her face contorted with rage. "It's your mother-in-law. Michael's mother. You ungrateful snake, you spawn of hell." "Ah," I drawled with unconcealed irony. "So, it's the elder Mrs. Sterling. My apologies. I've just gotten divorced and I'm not yet accustomed to the existence of a biological species like a mother-in-law. Is this urgent?" Eleanor was obviously choked by my cold, almost sarcastic tone. For a long moment, she was speechless. All that could be heard was her heavy breathing and the faint rustle of her pearls. "Anna, how dare you speak to me like that? Have you forgotten who fed you, clothed you, who allowed you to live like a queen for 5 years?" I almost laughed out loud. A queen? Yes, the kind who worked as a maid and paid for the privilege out of her own pocket. "Elder Mrs. Sterling, if you called to remind me of your charitable deeds, I suggest you save your money on the international call. Considering the current state of your son's company stock, every penny counts." "Shut up," Eleanor shrieked, her voice trembling with fury. "This is all you're doing, you venomous viper. Spreading rumors online, slandering Michael, slandering our family. You will fly back here immediately, hold a press conference, and announce that it was all a lie. Something you fabricated out of jealousy of Jessica while you were mentally unstable. Publicly apologize to Michael, to Jessica, to our entire family." A commanding tone, brook no argument, as if I were still the same Anna who could be molded and kneaded like clay. I patiently waited for her tirade to end and then said slowly, "Retract? Apologize? For what? Retract that Michael didn't cheat on me with his assistant Jessica, or that the child she's carrying isn't his? Or perhaps I should retract that your precious pearl necklace wasn't bought with my money? You're lying. It's all lies. Fakes. You're just being vindictive, Eleanor denied, but the uncertainty in her voice was audible even over the phone. Really? I chuckled. Elder Mrs. Sterling, the internet has a long memory. And bank statements can't be faked. Who do you think is easier to fool, netizens or a judge? There was a few seconds of silence on the other end. Eleanor was apparently trying to suppress her anger and change tactics. Her voice suddenly softened, which only made it more repulsive. Annie, darling, I know it hasn't been easy for you all these years. Michael. He's a man, sometimes they have affairs on the side. It's inevitable. But Jessica just gave us a grandson, an heir to the Sterling family. He's our blood. As Michael's legal wife, you should show some magnanimity. If you come back, apologize, and smooth over this scandal, I promise the Sterling family won't treat you unfairly. You will remain Mrs. Sterling. Jessica and her child won't threaten your status. Listen to that. What an understanding mother-in-law, offering me, the legal wife, to accept a mistress and an illegitimate child, and on top of that, to lie and apologize to protect their reputation. I could have applauded her shamelessness. Elder Mrs. Sterling, I interrupted her nauseating persuasion, my voice turning to ice. First, Michael and I have signed a divorce agreement, and the process is already underway. I am no longer Mrs. Sterling. Second, Jessica's child is Sterling family blood. What does that have to do with me, Anna Ashworth? And third, and most importantly, I paused and enunciated, word for word. The biggest mistake of my life was believing that patience could earn respect, and sacrifice could earn sincerity. I have now corrected that mistake. You deal with your own mess, and don't you dare bother me again. Anna, don't test my patience. Eleanor's mask instantly fell away. Her voice became sharp and venomous again. You think you've escaped by running abroad? Let me tell you, Michael has already found you. You'll regret this. You've ruined our family's life, and I'll make sure you have no life abroad either. You rootless orphan, what do you think you can fight us with? Oh, they found me. Or rather, they likely found the traces David wanted them to find. Elder Mrs. Sterling, are you threatening me? My voice held a note of curiosity. Have you by any chance forgotten that this conversation might be recorded? A clatter was heard on the other end, as if something had been dropped. Then came Eleanor's furious, slightly flustered voice. You're recording this? How dare you? And why shouldn't I? I retorted. Your son dares to cheat and have children on the side. You dare to use me as a free maid and an ATM. Why can't I record a conversation? I'm simply learning from your family. It's always useful to have proof. Eleanor apparently couldn't find more venomous words, or perhaps she finally realized that the Anna on the other end of the line was out of her control, had become a stranger, and a dangerous one. I had no intention of arguing with her further. The purpose of this call had been achieved. I had gauged their position, angered them, and added to my collection of evidence. Elder Mrs. Sterling, if there's nothing else, I'm hanging up, I said. And please tell Michael and Jessica that the show has just begun. They should take care of themselves and their newborn son. Anna, if you touch a single hair on my grandson's head, I will destroy you. Eleanor's voice became frightened and shrill. Calm down, I sneered coldly. I won't get my hands dirty. The evil you've done will come back to you like a boomerang. Goodbye, Elder Mrs. Sterling. No, not see you later. With that, ignoring the hysterical screams and threats from the other end, I decisively hung up and pressed the save recording button. Call duration, 1 minutes and 3 seconds. It contained Eleanor's threats, commands, attempts at blackmail, and insults. Especially valuable were her admissions that Jessica had given birth to a grandson and her threats to deal with me abroad. I stood up, walked to the window, and took a deep breath of fresh air, suppressing a wave of disgust and cold anger. Eleanor's reaction was predictable. They still lived in their own world, where they thought money and power could solve everything, trampling on others' dignity. They didn't understand, or refused to understand, the destructive power a person driven to despair could possess, having shed all fear and dependency. I encrypted the audio file, uploaded it to cloud storage, and sent David a short message. Fish on the hook. Recording of the call obtained. We can slowly leak a rumor that the Sterling family is threatening me abroad. David replied quickly, got it. We'll find suitable channels. By the way, Michael is trying to connect with influential American business communities and media here through unofficial channels, to pressure you or slander you by painting you as a crazy woman who ran off with money. We have countermeasures ready. Ran off with money. Crazy. How cliché and predictable. It seemed Michael's PR team in the US had run out of ideas and was acting out of desperation. Don't do anything yet, I replied. Let him continue his performance, waste his resources and connections. When he thinks he's about to succeed, we'll hit him in the face with the facts. The effect will be stronger. Okay. Be careful. Eleanor's threats are not always empty words, David warned. I know. I ended the conversation. Putting the phone aside, I sat back down at the desk. My gaze was fixed on the computer screen with financial data and contracts. Michael, you like to speak the language of money and power? Well, I will defeat you on your own turf, by your own rules. Eleanor's call acted like a stimulant. It didn't scare me, it made my thoughts clearer and my resolve firmer. The more insane and unprincipled they acted, the more it proved their fear and weakness. And all I needed to do was remain calm, and, step by step, tighten the noose around their necks. Outside. The sky was darkening. I stood up and turned on the living room lights. The fridge had the food David had left. I made myself a bowl of pasta. The taste was ordinary, but it was the first time in 5 years I was eating in silence, in my own space, by my own choice. The taste of freedom, even with a hint of gunpowder, was sweeter than any exquisite but cold dish at the Sterling dinner table. After eating and cleaning up, I returned to the desk and opened the documents again. The war had begun. I had no time for sentiment or hesitation. The next move was mine. The irritation from Eleanor's call quickly gave way to a colder, more productive feeling, like a hunter hearing their prey snap a tripwire. Not anger, just confirmation of my actions and certainty about the next step. David acted with incredible speed. Less than 24 hours after I sent him the recording, full of threats and self-incrimination, a detailed analysis of the Sterling family's consumer spending over 5 years, under the headline, How a Doting Mother-in-Law and Cheating Husband Lived Off the Wife's Fortune, began to circulate. It was disseminated through several influential financial and society blogs. I didn't closely follow the developments in the US. It was too draining. But I trusted David's timing and choice of channels. It was the perfect moment, right before Michael could attempt to exert pressure through his overseas connections, or just as the Sterling family was about to release some kind of rebuttal or launch a new smear campaign against me. We needed to land another devastating blow to their reputation with irrefutable facts. The exposé was published late at night, New York time, which was midday for me. I brewed a cup of tea, sat down at my computer, and opened the link David had sent. The infographic was professionally done. No emotional text, just cold charts, clear document scans, and brief explanations. It started with a summary graph. The horizontal axis showed 5 years, the vertical axis showed amounts in dollars. 2 lines were clearly separated. One curve represented expenses from my personal account, mostly premarital savings and income from rare private commissions transferred to the Sterling family's joint accounts and Eleanor's personal account. The total amount over 5 years was shocking. The other line, representing Michael's or the Sterling family's spending on my allowance and personal needs, was so negligible it was almost flat. Each transaction was annotated with a date, amount, source, and purpose. While account numbers and personal information were redacted, the authenticity and consistency of the data were undeniable. At the end of the infographic was a short text. The above represents only a portion of the tracked expenses. Over 5 years of marriage, Mrs. Anna Caldwell not only shouldered the heavy burden of domestic duties and emotional investment but also made significant financial contributions to the Sterling family. Her status and treatment within this family can be inferred from her recent livestream. Is the so-called marriage to a tycoon simply another version of targeted financial aid? No loud accusations, just facts. But this cold enumeration was more powerful than any hysterical outcry. I closed the page and sipped my cooling tea. My heart beat steadily. There was no elation, no joy. Only a sense of things proceeding as they should. These numbers, these receipts, they were the quantifiable measure of 5 years of my youth and my dignity. Now that they were public, it was as if all my sleepless nights of endurance had been appraised and put on display. Was I ashamed? No. They should be the ones to feel shame. I didn't immediately check US social media, instead turning to the additional documents on Michael's business dealings that David had sent. About 2 hours later, I opened the largest US social media platform. As expected, the trends had exploded. Number, Sterling family expenses, shock. Number Anna Caldwell bankroll tycoon, viral. Number pearls of deceit, HOT. Number Sterling used wife's money on Mistress, breaking. I clicked the first link. The infographic had been reposted over 1,000,000 times. The comments poured in. My God, look at these figures. Anna didn't marry a tycoon. She signed up to be an ATM and a housekeeper rolled into one. And some people were still saying she was a gold digger. How do you feel now? Aren't you ashamed? This whole family was living off her, and that pearl necklace. Old Lady Sterling was bragging, it was a priceless heirloom blessed by some guru. Turns out, the annual expensive maintenance was paid for by the daughter-in-law. I wonder if the saints know about this? Paying off your mistress from the family budget managed by your wife. Michael, you have no heart and no brains. This isn't just vile, it's economic exploitation. Anna, sue them immediately. The Sterling Group stock tanked again today. Serves them right. Like family, like company. I'm just curious what Jessica Hayes's face looked like when she saw these bills, especially the origin of her hush money. Being a mistress at the legal wife's expense, that's not a very glamorous look. Public opinion had completely turned and was even beginning to move in the deeper direction I wanted. People were starting to question the Sterling Group's corporate governance, financial transparency, and Michael's personal integrity. For a publicly traded company, this was fatal. Just then, David called. Seen it? His voice was hoarse from a sleepless night, but energetic. Yes, the effect is better than I expected, panic. David answered succinctly. Michael's PR team is completely paralyzed. All their prepared rebuttals are now useless. The board of directors has intensified the pressure. Word is, a few old shareholders personally visited their estate in Connecticut. Michael himself reportedly trashed his office. And now, he's desperately trying to put out the fire. And Eleanor? I remembered her arrogant tone on the phone. That's even more interesting. David seemed to chuckle. They say when she saw that list of her expenses, she collapsed. She was taken to the hospital. Not faking it. Her blood pressure genuinely spiked. Journalists are camped outside her private clinic now. Everyone wants a first-hand account. And those old socialite friends of hers who used to praise her as a benevolent mother-in-law are all silent now. Some have even quietly deleted their old posts. That's how it is. That's the flip side of fame. When you're put on a pedestal, be prepared for a harder fall. The reputation Eleanor valued so much is now in tatters, shredded by her own spending and my publications, I said dispassionately. And Jessica? That character was also key. She's likely still in the postpartum ward, but she must be aware of what's happening. Her exact reaction is unknown, but with Eleanor in the hospital and Michael in a panic, it's unlikely anyone is looking after her and the baby right now. Before, they might have wanted to use the birth of a grandson to somehow improve public opinion, but now the child has become yet another piece of evidence in their scandal. Besides, the accounts clearly list the hush money for her, which damages her image as an independent woman who found true love. She's probably not in a good state. It's not enough, I said quietly. This is just a blow to their reputation, not their foundation. Besides his reputation, Michael values his company and his money most. I understand. David's tone became serious. The leads you provided, about potential illegal deals and fund transfers, our people are actively investigating them. We've already had some key breakthroughs. We've also tracked his attempts to move some of your joint assets to offshore accounts, but this requires more caution. Once we publish this, it will be an all-out legal and corporate war. I know. I watched the sun setting outside the window. The sky was painted a deep crimson. Let the echo of these receipts ring a little longer. When Michael can't take it anymore and does something even more foolish, or when they try to counterattack, we'll play our next ace. Okay. Be careful. Given public opinion, the probability of Michael resorting to extreme measures out of desperation is increasing, David warned again. After ending the call, I sat alone in the darkening room for a long time. The cold figures that had caused a storm on the internet seemed separated from me by an invisible pane of glass. I could see the waves, but I couldn't feel their heat. There was a satisfaction in revenge, but it was more like a sense of a duty fulfilled. 5 years. 1,825 days. My time, my talent, my savings, my feelings. All of it had been converted into numbers and curves on those charts. Was it worth it? The old, love-deceived Anna would have cried her eyes out and decided it wasn't. But for the Anna sitting now in a foreign apartment, coolly planning her next move, the question was meaningless. This wasn't a calculation of profit, it was a necessary reckoning. I stood up, turned on the light, dispelling the twilight, and went to the kitchen to make dinner. My movements were practiced, but no longer out of a duty to serve someone else, but to take care of myself, to preserve my strength for the war I had started. As I was chopping vegetables, my phone screen lit up. A text from an unknown number. Just one sentence. Anna, you will regret this. No signature. But that arrogant tone was so much like Michael, or one of his foolish underlings. I didn't reply, didn't even bother to read it carefully, just deleted the message and blocked the number. Regret. All my regrets were in the past. The moment I decided to go live and board that plane. Now, I only had the road ahead. And you, Michael, Eleanor, Jessica, your regrets are just beginning. The media storm caused by the publication of the financial records continued to rage. My life abroad, however, proceeded with surprising calm and regularity. Every day, I would wake up, sort through the documents from David, monitor the news from the US, study the local language, and occasionally, with all necessary precautions, venture out to the nearby supermarket or park. My body and soul were slowly but surely healing in this tranquility, far from the epicenter of the storm. David had arranged everything perfectly. The residential complex was under tight security, and entry for non-residents required multiple verifications. I knew Michael was likely using all his resources to find me, but at least physically, I was safe. However, the inevitable happened. One afternoon, I met with an experienced local immigration lawyer recommended by David. We sat in an upscale cafe known for its discretion, discussing long-term residency options and legal details. The meeting was successful. After the lawyer left, I remained seated alone by the window, slowly stirring my cooled latte and mentally reviewing our conversation. Quiet jazz played in the cafe. There were few customers, and the atmosphere was serene. At that moment, the bell above the entrance chimed softly. I instinctively looked up and froze. A man had entered the cafe. He looked haggard, his expensive suit was rumpled, there were dark circles under his eyes, and stubble shadowed his jaw. He was a far cry from his usual immaculate, polished, and arrogant image. But that face, those eyes though tired, they were still sharp, and now they were locked onto me. It was Michael Sterling. He had actually found me, and he had found me here. My heart, which had stopped for a second, immediately resumed a steady, even slower and colder, rhythm. I set down the silver spoon. The clink of porcelain against the saucer sounded particularly sharp in the quiet cafe. Michael strode towards me. His steps were quick, filled with a restrained urgency and anger. The few other patrons and the waiters noticed the unusual atmosphere and cast curious or wary glances our way. He stopped at my table. His tall figure cast a shadow over me. He brought with him the chill of the street and that familiar scent of cologne, which now only provoked disgust. Anna. His voice was hoarse, as if he hadn't slept for days or was struggling to contain his emotions. So, you are here. I leaned back in my chair, increasing the distance between us, and looked at him calmly, as if he were a stranger disturbing the peace. Mr. Sterling, is there something I can help you with? My tone was as detached as one would use with a bank teller. The address clearly stung him. Michael's brow furrowed sharply. A flash of anger ignited in his eyes, but he took a deep breath, trying to regain control. He looked at the empty chair opposite me. Can we talk? I believe everything we needed to discuss has already been outlined in the divorce agreement. I turned away, picked up a napkin, and slowly dabbed the corners of my mouth. If Mr. Sterling has any objections to the terms of the agreement, please contact my lawyer, Mr. David Chen. A personal meeting is inappropriate at this time, especially during such a sensitive period. Anna, he finally snapped. His voice rose, causing the neighboring table to turn. Do you have to be like this? We were husband and wife, after all. Husband and wife? I laughed softly, but the laughter didn't reach my eyes. Mr. Sterling, you seem to have forgotten that your wife, Miss Jessica Hayes, is currently in a postpartum clinic in the US with your newborn son. Do I need to remind you that our divorce proceedings are already underway? Michael's face turned ugly. He abruptly pulled out the chair opposite me and sat down unceremoniously. Leaning forward, he hissed through his teeth, "Fine, a divorce, but did you have to be so cruel? The live stream. Those damn financial records. Do you have any idea how much trouble you've caused for the company? For me? Trouble?" I tilted my head, feigning confusion. Mr. Sterling, are you referring to the drop in stock prices, the pressure from the board, the suspension of partner contracts, and the fact that your esteemed mother was hospitalized? That kind of trouble? A vein throbbed on Michael's temple. His fists clenched under the table. Anna, I know it hasn't been easy for you all these years. My mother can be harsh. I was busy with work, Maybe I didn't pay enough attention to you. But you shouldn't have retaliated like this. We could have settled everything quietly. What kind of compensation do you want? Money? Name a price. Quietly. Compensation. Money. There he was. Michael always believed money could solve everything, including the 5 years of humiliation and betrayal I had endured from him and his family. I looked into his slightly bloodshot eyes, filled with anxiety and anger. There was panic, perhaps even confusion and fear that I was out of his control, but not a shred of remorse, not a hint of regret. Michael, I said his name for the first time, calmly and clearly. Do you think everything I've done is just about money? He was taken aback, apparently not expecting such a question. Then he frowned even more deeply. What else could it be about? You're hurt, you feel I undervalued you. Fine. I admit it, I mishandled the situation with Jessica. My mother was unfair to you. But all of that can be compensated. If you come back, hold a press conference, and say it was all a misunderstanding, that you acted emotionally, we can start over. I can give you more. Start over? I interrupted his absurd proposal as if I had just heard the world's biggest joke. With you, Jessica, and your child? Michael, your audacity never ceases to amaze me. My mockery made him turn pale. Anna, don't push it. You think you're safe just because you're hiding abroad? Let me tell you, I have ways to make your life a living hell here too. One phone call, and you won't be able to find a decent job or rent an apartment. You believe me? The same threats as Eleanor. No wonder. Like mother, like son. I watched his enraged face in silence. The last faint echoes of feelings tied to the past finally faded. This man had never truly known or respected me. Before, in his eyes, I was a dependent plant. Now, apparently, I was an arrogant traitor who needed to be taught a lesson. Are you finished? I asked, after he had said his piece. Michael, thrown off by my excessively calm reaction, stared at me, breathing heavily. I reached for my now cold latte. The cup was lukewarm. And before Michael could realize what I was about to do, I flicked my wrist. The entire brown liquid, along with the remnants of milk foam, landed squarely and completely on Michael's face, a face I had once found handsome, but now only found repulsive. Splash. The liquid dripped down his sharp jawline, soaking the collar of his expensive jacket and shirt. Coffee stains spread across his face. He looked pathetic. Time seemed to stop for a second. Michael froze, his eyes wide with disbelief, as if he couldn't comprehend what had just happened. A few stifled gasps were heard in the cafe. The waiters watched us tensely, but didn't dare to approach. I put down the empty cup, picked up a napkin, and wiped a few drops of coffee from my hand. My movements were graceful and calm, as if I had just performed the most ordinary action. Michael. I looked at his stunned, stained face. My voice was clear and cold, loud enough for everyone watching to hear. This is for our 5 dead years of marriage and for your disgusting hypocrisy. And this is the answer to your question. I don't need your money, and I'm not afraid of your threats. I never wanted compensation. I want you. The Sterling family, you, your mother, and Jessica, to pay for everything you did to me. As you deserve. Now get out of my sight, and don't you dare appear before me again. Otherwise, next time it won't be just coffee on your face. With that, without giving him another glance, I took my purse and coat, stood up, and calmly walked around the frozen, speechless Michael, his face contorted with rage, and headed for the exit. The bell chimed again. The cool street air slightly calmed my racing heart. I knew that with that cup of coffee, the last veil of false warmth between me and Michael had been torn away for good. From now on, it was a war of annihilation between us. I had barely descended the steps of the cafe when a calm, confident male voice spoke beside me. A brilliant counterattack, Miss Ashworth. I stopped and turned. Standing under a tree near the cafe was a man in a dark gray cashmere coat. He was in his mid-30s, slim, with a restrained, intellectual air. He wore rimless glasses, and his gaze was deep. He had obviously witnessed everything that had just happened in the cafe. His face showed no particular emotion, but his eyes held a hint of admiration and some complex understanding. I didn't know him, but his gaze was not like that of one of Michael's men, nor that of a mere bystander. Excuse me? I was on guard. The man took 2 steps forward and stopped at a polite distance. He took a business card from his inner coat pocket and handed it to me with both hands. The card was simple, a name, a title, contact information. I took it. My gaze fell on the name, Alex Ashworth. Title, Managing Partner, Ashworth Global Investments. Ashworth. I looked up at him again. On closer inspection, there was something vaguely familiar about his features, especially the shape of his brows and eyes. Perhaps we should talk somewhere else. Alex Ashworth's voice was calm and reassuring. About your past, your future, and how to make Mr. Sterling and the family behind him truly pay. His words, like a stone thrown into a calm lake, sent ripples through me. Michael had just found me. And now, this man with the surname Ashworth appeared, obviously with serious intentions. A coincidence? Or? I clutched the business card in my hand. The cold edge of the card dug into my fingers. A new game seemed to have begun the moment I threw that cup of coffee. The name and title on the business card glinted slightly in the afternoon sun. Alex Ashworth. Ashworth Global Investments. My heart beat steadily, but a strange current, a mixture of caution and an odd premonition, stirred within me. The surname Ashworth. The coincidence was too deliberate, and his phrase about your past touched the deepest, most secret part of my soul, a part I had never spoken of to anyone. I didn't answer immediately, my gaze shifting from the card to Alex's face, trying to read more from his deep, calm eyes. He allowed me to study him, his posture confident, showing no hurry or impatience. He simply stood there, as if he had anticipated my caution. Sounds came from the cafe. Perhaps the staff was cleaning up the mess I had made. Or perhaps Michael would be coming out soon. Whoever this Alex Ashworth was, and whatever his motives, I couldn't stay here. There's a tea house 2 blocks from here. It's quiet. I put the business card in my pocket. My tone was neutral. If Mr. Ashworth doesn't mind, we can talk on the way. Alex gave a slight nod. As you wish. We walked side by side down the sidewalk, maintaining a comfortable distance. I deliberately slowed my pace, listening for sounds behind me while quickly analyzing the situation. Ashworth Global Investments. The name sounded familiar. I seemed to recall it was a major international investment firm with a formidable reputation, operating discreetly but possessing immense resources. Their style was a world away from the Sterling Group, which had grown out of the real estate sector. How could such a man be interested in me, just from witnessing that scene? Miss Ashworth, you are more composed than I anticipated. Alex was the first to break the silence. His voice was as calm as the lazy sunlight on the street. To face such pursuit and threats from Sterling, to respond so decisively, and then to immediately assess a new situation. Life taught me, I replied dryly, not elaborating. Mr. Ashworth, you mentioned my past. He didn't answer directly, instead asking a seemingly unrelated question. Miss Ashworth, do you remember your parents? My step faltered, almost imperceptibly. My parents. It was the foggiest, most painful corner of my memory. A terrible car accident, I had been told, had claimed their young lives, making me an orphan. I was too young to remember their faces, able to conjure their images only from a few yellowed photographs. The orphanage's records on them were sparse. They were from out of town, in business. No relatives were present at the time of the accident. They died when I was very young. I tried to keep my voice even. Why do you ask? Alex stopped and turned to face me. We were standing under a large plane tree, its dappled shadows falling across his face, making his expression enigmatic. What if I told you that perhaps they didn't both die in that accident? He said slowly, his eyes fixed on mine. That single sentence was like a thunderclap on a clear day. I snapped my head up, my pupils constricting. I stared at him. What did you say? I said, perhaps. He corrected himself. His tone remained calm, but each word carried immense weight. I have been searching for someone for a long time. A girl who was lost more than 20 years ago due to a family dispute and a tragic accident. Her mother, my father's sister, my aunt, and my aunt's only daughter, if she is alive, would be about your age. And her name would have been Anna. Aunt, father's sister, lost daughter. The information was so overwhelming that I felt dizzy for a moment. I instinctively took a half step back, my back hitting the rough trunk of the tree. The cold touch brought me back to my senses slightly. This is absurd. I heard my own dry voice. What proof do you have? The proof needs to be verified. That is precisely why I found you. Alex took an old, carefully preserved photograph from his inner pocket and handed it to me. The photo was faded, its edges worn. It showed a young couple. The man was handsome and intellectual, the woman gentle and beautiful. They were holding a swaddled infant. The woman's features were a 7 or 8 out of 10 match for the image of my mother in my memory. And the man's face, on closer inspection, bore a resemblance to the Alex Ashworth standing before me. I took the photo with a trembling hand. My fingers were ice cold. I stared at the woman's face. My chest tightened, and it became hard to breathe. That is your mother, Anna Ashworth Sr., and my father when he was young. Alex's voice grew quieter, a note of sadness creeping in. In their arms is their first child, my cousin. At that time, the family business was facing a major crisis, and there was internal strife. My aunt and her husband left with their young daughter to wait out the storm, but on the way, they were in a terrible accident. My aunt's husband died at the scene. She herself was critically injured and went missing. And the little girl disappeared. Once the family stabilized, we began to search, but there were few leads. He looked at me with a complex, expectant expression. And then recently, as the scandal surrounding the Sterling Group in the US escalated, your name and photos began to appear frequently. Someone in the family noticed you, especially my father. He said that your eyes, especially when you're defiant, are very much like my aunt's when she was young. Your age, the fact that you're an orphan, and the name Anna, it all fits. That is why I am here. I clutched the old photograph, my knuckles white. My mind was in chaos. This could be an elaborate ruse to use me against Michael, or a new trick by Michael himself. But the woman in the photo, that vague sense of kinship, and the complex emotions in Alex's eyes that would be difficult to fake. Even if what you're saying is true, I looked up, trying to speak calmly. It's been over 20 years. You suddenly appear and tell me all this. For what purpose? To acknowledge kinship, or is there something else? Alex seemed to have expected this question. He sighed softly. First, to confirm your identity. That will require scientific verification, like a DNA test. If you agree, we can arrange it. Second, he paused, his gaze becoming sharp and resolute. If it is confirmed that you are my cousin, then the blood of the Ashworth family should not be subjected to further humiliation. The Ashworth family will not stand by while you are treated this way by Michael and the Sterling family. The Ashworth family. I processed his words. Our main assets are overseas. In the US, we operate non-publicly, which is why few know of us. But in terms of influence and resources, Alex's voice was calm, but it held a powerful confidence. The Sterling Group is not our equal. If this was true, this turn of events would drastically change the power dynamic between me and Michael. I would no longer be a helpless orphan to be blackmailed and humiliated. But after the shock came even greater caution. There's no such thing as a free lunch. I need time. I returned the photograph to him, not giving a definite answer. This is too sudden, and I have more urgent matters to attend to right now. My gaze flickered toward the cafe. Although Michael was no longer in sight, his threats still echoed in my ears. I understand. Alex took the photograph and carefully put it away. I can wait, and I will give you the necessary time and space. He added meaningfully, Sterling has some influence here, but he will soon find that his options are severely limited. Furthermore, if you require a more professional international team to gather and leverage evidence of his asset manipulation, I can help. It was a huge temptation. David was reliable and competent, but he was one man against an unscrupulous opponent like Michael. If the power of the so-called Ashworth family were to join in, why are you helping me? I looked him straight in the eye. Even if I am your cousin, we haven't seen each other in 20 years. We are strangers. Alex was silent for a moment, his gaze behind his glasses thoughtful. There are two reasons. First, it is my father's obsession and our family's duty. Second, he looked at me with approval. The way you single-handedly brought Sterling and his family to this state. That strength of spirit, that decisiveness, it is the Ashworth way. The family needs strong people. And helping family needs no further reason. Just then, my phone vibrated. It was David. I signaled to Alex and stepped aside. Anna. David's voice was unusually sharp and angry. That psycho Sterling just held an emergency press conference in the US. He's denying all accusations of infidelity and financial misconduct. And is counter-accusing you of being mentally unstable due to infertility, fabricating evidence, and attempting to abscond with family funds. He even showed a copy of some supposed diagnosis and a signed confession where you allegedly admit to slander. They're obviously fakes, but they could seriously confuse public opinion. A cornered dog. Using fake diagnoses and slander, how low. I clutched the phone, my fingers cold, but an icy smirk formed on my lips. Michael, you didn't disappoint me. I understand. My voice was surprisingly calm. David, prepare our countermeasures, especially the ironclad proof of his financial crimes. It's time to release some of it. And contact all reliable media outlets. We're preparing a rebuttal and a lawsuit. After hanging up, I returned to Alex. He had obviously guessed what happened from the snippets of conversation and my expression. "Need help?" he asked directly. I looked at this man who might be my cousin. I remembered Michael's dirty tactics. His threats in the cafe. All my doubts and caution were, in that moment, pushed aside by a thirst for revenge and a determination to see it through to the end. "Mr. Ashworth," I said clearly. "Regarding the DNA test, I agree. But while we wait for the results, perhaps we should discuss a collaboration. For example, how to turn Michael's press conference and his forged documents into an even bigger joke." I paused, a cold fire igniting in my eyes. "And how to make him pay for today's stunt, truly pay, in a way that he cannot possibly bear." Alex looked at me, and a genuine smile finally appeared on his face. It was a smile of approval and understanding. "With pleasure, Anna." He switched to using my first name, and it sounded natural, almost familial. "Let's find a quiet place and plan. I think Mr. Sterling is about to find out who he's really dealing with." The wind blew, and the leaves of the plane tree rustled. I looked up through the branches at the high, vast sky. The past was a fog, the future uncertain. But I knew that from this moment on, the war between me and Michael had escalated to a new, far more lethal level for him. The collaboration with Alex began with incredible speed. The DNA test would take time, but neither of us was going to wait for the results. The vague sense of kinship and a complete alignment of goals had already forged a tacit understanding. He brought in a team of professionals, top corporate investigators, international lawyers, and PR strategists. They quickly established contact with David. Michael's hasty and vicious press conference in the US became the catalyst for our counterattack. He had tried to smear me, painting me as a delusional fraud, not realizing that he was only demonstrating his own desperation and insanity. The forged diagnoses and confessions couldn't withstand the slightest scrutiny and became new pieces of evidence against him. "It's time." I sat in an office provided by Alex on the top floor of a downtown skyscraper, looking at the finalized package of evidence on my computer screen. David and Alex sat opposite me. David's eyes burned with a fighter's zeal. Alex was, as always, composed, only the tips of his fingers tapping on a tablet. Location: the rooftop restaurant at the Ritz-Carlton. Time: the day after tomorrow, 12:00 p.m., Alex began. "It's an iconic spot in New York with a great view. The press can get in easily, but security can be controlled. I've already rented the entire restaurant under the guise of a private luncheon for Ashworth Global Investments to discuss a potential collaboration with the Sterling Group. Michael is desperately looking for a lifeline and trying to restore his reputation. He won't refuse such an opportunity. A bait wrapped in an offer he couldn't resist. The livestream team is already in place. They will pose as invited journalists," David added. "Multiple cameras, an encrypted signal, so it can't be cut. Broadcast channels on major social media platforms and the websites of several reputable business publications have been prepared." "And the police?" I asked. This was the key. Alex nodded. "Based on the evidence you provided, supplemented by our team, regarding the scheme to siphon funds through offshore companies, money laundering, loan fraud, and the transfer of huge sums to Jessica Hayes and her relatives, our international law firm has prepared and filed a formal complaint with the relevant economic crime units here and in the US. The evidence is irrefutable. They've already opened a case and have agreed to intervene at the moment we have the suspect contained." Everything was ready. The invisible net was cast. All that was left was for the prey to walk into the trap. I sent Michael a message, not from a new number, but from an old social media account he might not have blocked yet. The message was simple. "Tomorrow at noon, the Ritz-Carlton rooftop restaurant. Let's talk one last time about the divorce, about the retraction you want. Come alone." Less than 10 minutes later, Michael called. "Anna. You've finally come to your senses." His voice held a mixture of restrained triumph and weary urgency. "It's about time. Why did you have to let it get so scandalous? We'll talk tomorrow when we meet." My voice was even. "Remember, alone." "Fine. I'm giving you this chance." Michael apparently thought I had broken under the pressure or been scared by his fake documents. His tone even softened. "Anna, rest assured, if you cooperate tomorrow, I can forget the past. We can also renegotiate the divorce settlement. I promise, you'll be set for life." I hung up. His condescending tone was nauseating. Forget. Set for life. He still didn't understand that some things can't be bought or compensated for. The next day, 11:50 a.m. The rooftop restaurant at the Ritz-Carlton. Beyond the floor-to-ceiling windows, the New York City skyline stretched out. The sun was shining. The restaurant was set up for a business luncheon. Long tables, white tablecloths, fine china, flowers. Apart from a few impeccably trained waiters who were actually Alex's people, there were only a few other guests, members of Alex's and David's teams, and the camera crew disguised as journalists. I sat at the head of one of the tables, wearing a severe but elegant black pantsuit. My makeup was flawless, my expression calm. On the table in front of me was a slim folder and a phone, recording and connected to the encrypted broadcast channel. Alex sat at an adjacent table, a laptop in front of him, pretending to work. David stood by a pyramid of champagne glasses, speaking quietly with one of the journalists. At 11:58 a.m., the elevator chimed. Michael walked in. He had obviously prepared meticulously. A new navy blue suit, perfect hair. He was trying to reclaim the image of a successful corporate CEO, but the dark circles under his eyes and a subtle anxiety in his gaze betrayed him. He scanned the room, saw me, then Alex and the journalists. He frowned slightly but quickly composed himself and strode towards me. Anna. He sat down opposite me, trying to force a confident smile, but his eyes kept darting towards Alex. And who is this? This is Mr. Alex Ashworth of Ashworth Global Investments. He helped arrange today's meeting. I introduced calmly. Michael's eyes lit up. He immediately nodded towards Alex, a businesslike smile on his face. I've heard of Ashworth Global. Mr. Ashworth, a pleasure. He apparently thought I had arranged this meeting as a sign of reconciliation. Alex merely gave a slight nod in return, not looking up from his computer. Michael looked back at me and, lowering his voice, asked hurriedly, Anna, what is it? Why did you call me here? I see the journalists. Are you ready to make a retraction? What do you need from me? Greed and impatience were plain in his eyes. He seemed to already envision the crisis averted, himself sealing a deal with Ashworth Global. I looked up and met his gaze calmly. Michael, do you remember what you said on our wedding day? He was taken aback. What does that have to do with anything? We're here for business. Business? I smirked and, picking up the folder, slowly opened it. For me, this is the most important business today. I took out the first document and placed it in front of Michael. These are bank statements from the offshore company Altair, registered in the British Virgin Islands, through which you transferred nearly $3 million in 17 installments to the personal accounts of Jessica Hayes and her mother over the last 3 years. The purpose of payments, consulting services, dividends. But Altair has no connection to the Sterling Group. This is money laundering and concealment of marital assets. The smile froze on Michael's face. His pupils constricted. He lunged for the document. What is this nonsense? It's a fake. I didn't stop him, and took out the second document. And this is a comparative analysis of the loan application for the Smart District project and the final audit report. You inflated the cost estimates and contractor bids, securing a bank loan for $15 million more than necessary. About $6 million of that was funneled through complex schemes to a shell company registered in Jessica's brother's name and used to purchase assets overseas. This is loan fraud on a massive scale. Where did you get this? Michael's voice trembled. His face turned white. He frantically scanned the documents. The more he read, the more sweat beaded on his forehead. I didn't stop. The third document, the fourth, including hints of his dubious connections with certain officials, screenshots of his correspondence with the CFO about falsifying reports, and even a transcript of an audio recording where he and Jessica discussed how to leave me with nothing after the divorce. Ironclad evidence, one after another, stripped away his veneer of respectability, exposing the sordid truth. Anna, you set me up. Michael finally understood what was happening. He shot to his feet, his eyes bloodshot, his face contorted with rage. It's all lies. You made it all up. You're insane. I'll sue you for slander. You'll rot in prison. He screamed, completely losing his composure. I remained seated, watching his ugly tantrum as if it were a bad play. Lies? I picked up the phone that had been broadcasting the whole time and turned the screen towards him and the cameras. Michael, then repeat that for the camera. For the whole country. No, for the whole world. Say that it's all lies. Michael looked as if he had been struck by lightning. He froze, staring at the screen in disbelief, then at the journalists. He finally realized the trap he was in. The blood drained from his face, his lips trembled, but he couldn't utter a word. Oh, and I almost forgot. I took the last document from the folder. It was a copy of an official document with seals from the FBI and the SEC. Based on your economic crimes, money laundering, fraud, as well as forgery and slander, law enforcement has officially opened a case. They have the authority to detain you for questioning. As soon as I finished speaking, the elevator doors opened again. 6 uniformed police officers, led by a detective in a suit, entered the room and walked briskly towards our table. The detective showed his badge and a warrant. Mr. Sterling, you are a suspect in a series of serious economic crimes. This is a warrant for your arrest. You have the right to remain silent. Anything you say can and will be used against you in a court of law. Please come with us. 2 officers flanked Michael. It was as if all the bones had been removed from his body. He staggered and almost fell. He looked at me with a gaze full of horror, hatred, and disbelief. Michael, I said one last time as they led him away, my voice carrying over the broadcast microphones everywhere. This is my final gift to you. I hope you have a good time reflecting on your life in prison. He was being taken away, a broken man. There was no trace left of the once great CEO of the Sterling Group. Silence fell in the restaurant. I ended the broadcast and stood up. Bright sunlight flooded the room. The meticulously planned, months-long operation was over. David came over and put a firm hand on my shoulder. His eyes were red, but filled with relief. Alex closed his laptop and walked over as well. Are you okay? I took a deep breath and exhaled slowly, releasing all the poison that had accumulated over the years. Never been better, I replied, looking out at the vast sky beyond the window. The broadcast was over, but the real storm was just beginning. A storm that would sweep away Michael Sterling and everything he had. And I, Anna Ashworth, had finally, with my own hands, severed all ties to the past. The images of Michael Sterling's arrest went viral instantly. This wasn't a carefully edited news report, it was a real-time collapse. His ashen face, his buckling knees, the way he was almost dragged away by the police, that image was seared into the public's memory, more deeply than any of his business magazine covers. After the broadcast ended, a veritable tsunami began. I returned to the apartment Alex had provided, turned off all news notifications, and drew the curtains, shutting out the outside world. My body and spirit were depleted, as if after a grueling battle. Waves of exhaustion washed over me, but I didn't sleep. I just sat in the silence, listening to the steady beat of my own heart, feeling an unprecedented emptiness and peace in my chest. A few hours later, David called. His voice was hoarse, but filled with excitement and relief. Anna, it's over. Michael has been formally arrested. Bail was denied. The evidence is too strong. Back in the US, the reaction was immediate. The Sterling Group's stock hit rock bottom at the market open. The SEC has launched an investigation. Banks and partners have already announced they are severing ties. The Sterling Group is finished. I listened without emotion. And here's the interesting part, David continued. The board of directors held an emergency meeting, removed Michael from all his positions, and announced they will be seeking damages from him. All his relatives who were living off him are now disowning him faster than anyone. And Eleanor? There was a momentary silence on the other end. They say when she saw Michael's arrest live on air, she had a massive stroke. She's in the ICU at that same private clinic. Her condition is critical. A stroke. Unexpected, but fitting. Her son, her reputation, her wealth, everything she lived for collapsed in an instant. And Jessica? David sighed. She's still in the postpartum ward. Apparently, at the time of the broadcast, she was giving an interview to some small publication, trying to project an image of a strong single mother. When she saw what happened, she had a complete breakdown. Screaming, breaking things, they say she even attacked the journalist. She's under medical observation now. Her postpartum depression has severely worsened. The baby has also suffered from the stress and lack of care. A woman who tried to climb the ladder using a man and a pregnancy, when her support collapsed, so did her world. Who's managing things now? Some distant relative of Michael's that the board temporarily put in charge of cleaning up the mess. But it's clear to everyone that the Sterling Group can't be saved. Bankruptcy and liquidation of assets are the only way out. Alex's people say several large funds are already preparing to swallow up the most valuable pieces of the company. I see. And on our end? We'll monitor the criminal case. As for the marital assets he siphoned off, our legal team is already preparing a civil suit for recovery. Even though the company is bankrupt, Michael's personal assets and those transferred to Jessica can be claimed. Alex's team and I will handle it. You just rest. After the call, I sat in the dark for a long time. The wicked were punished. That cliché had now become a reality for those who had trampled on me. But I felt no elation, only a sense of completion, a heavy, dearly bought completion. A few days later, I was trying to pick up a paintbrush again, sketching the unfamiliar landscape outside my window, when the video intercom buzzed. On the screen was a puffy, aged face with a cloudy, desperate gaze. Eleanor Sterling. She was in a wheelchair, wrapped in a blanket. A caregiver stood beside her. There was no trace of her former polish. Behind her stood two men in suits. She had found me. I didn't open the door, didn't answer the call, just watched as she moved her lips silently, pleading or cursing. My phone rang. An unknown local number. I walked to the window. Annie. Eleanor's voice on the phone was hoarse, sycophantic, tinged with sobs. It's Mom. Your mother-in-law. I'm begging you, open the door, let me see you. I'll get on my knees for you. Elder Mrs. Sterling, we have nothing to talk about. Yes, we do, she shrieked. Anna, I know I was wrong. I was terrible. You can hit me, curse me. But Michael. He was your husband. You can't watch him go to prison. He'll die in there. He's my only son. I'm begging you, withdraw your statement. Tell the police it was a misunderstanding. We'll give you everything we have left, just save him. Listening to her tearful pleas, I felt nothing. When she called me a barren freeloader, did she think of giving me a chance? When Michael and Jessica planned to leave me with nothing, did they remember their marital vows? Elder Mrs. Sterling, everyone is equal before the law. Michael broke the law, and the court will judge him. Your pleas are useless. No, they're not. If you just say it was a family dispute, that the evidence was faked. Anna, I'm begging you. A commotion was heard on the phone, the caregiver's shout. I listened coldly. Eleanor, I said her name for the first time. The other end fell silent. Listen carefully. Your son is going to prison. Your empire is going to fall. This is what you deserve. And you will live. Live and watch everything you were proud of disappear. That will be your greatest punishment. I hung up, not listening to her hysterical curses, and blocked the number. Walking to the intercom, I saw the crazed old woman in the wheelchair on the screen. I pressed the button to call security. Security, this is the resident of 16A. There are unauthorized individuals downstairs disturbing my peace. Please remove them immediately and add them to the blacklist. Thank you. I turned off the intercom, cutting myself off from the noise below, and returned to my easel. The sun illuminated the unfinished painting. Clean lines, endless possibilities. The commotion downstairs was just a minor ripple on the water, one that quickly vanished. The dust had settled. Those who had done evil were reaping the rewards in their own private hells. And the new life of Anna Ashworth was just beginning. The flash of cameras, the warmth of spotlights, the elegant voice of the MC speaking in French. I stood in the center of the room at a reception following a show by an avant-garde designer during Paris Fashion Week. I was wearing the centerpiece of his collection, a smoky gray gown with a silver thread phoenix pattern. Mademoiselle Ashworth, over here please. Anna, how does it feel to wear this creation from the Rebirth collection? Microphones, questions in various languages. I smiled, answering calmly in French and English. This dress carries a great power. The designer wanted to convey the idea that after fire and destruction, one can rise again, even brighter. That resonates with me deeply. Does that mean you have also experienced a kind of rebirth? A perceptive journalist asked. I met his gaze, still smiling. Everyone has ups and downs in life. The important thing is to have the courage to move forward and decide who you want to become. Across the room, Alex Ashworth was speaking with representatives of old European media outlets. The DNA test results had confirmed our relationship 6 months prior. It didn't bring a storm of emotion, but it provided a sense of foundation and belonging. The Ashworth family had become my support. The reception was winding down. Citing fatigue, I declined further after parties and, accompanied by security, headed for the exit. At the very exit, I froze for a moment. There, in the shadow of a column, stood Michael. I didn't recognize him at first. He was wearing an old, rumpled suit. His hair was cut short but was messy, his cheeks were hollow. All of his former polish was gone, replaced by a gray weariness and timidity. He was holding a crumpled paper bag. He tried to approach, but security politely but firmly blocked his path. I stopped. The corridor fell silent for a moment. Michael swallowed and, mustering his courage, took a step forward. Anna, Miss Ashworth. His voice was dry and trembling as he corrected himself. That correction was the final period on a long sentence. I remained silent, looking at him as if he were a stranger. I was just released. Good behavior. My sentence was reduced. I know I have no right, but I heard you were here tonight. I just wanted to see you. To say, I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. The words he must have rehearsed 1,000 times in prison now sounded weightless and empty. And this? He held out the bag. It's some of your old things. Your sketches, your old camera. My mother. Eleanor. She never threw them away. I found them when I got out. I thought you should have them back. My old things. Things I had long since buried in my memory. My assistant stepped forward to refuse, but I stopped him with a gesture. I looked at Michael's face. In his eyes was a timid hope, regret, and perhaps a longing for his old life. Mr. Sterling, my voice was clear and formal. The past is the past. I have no need for those things. Please dispose of them yourself. As for everything else, I met his faded gaze. We have long owed each other nothing. There is no need for us to meet or discuss anything ever again. With that, without looking back, I walked toward the exit where my car was waiting. The click of my heels on the marble floor was crisp and rhythmic, each step carrying me further away from a past filled with lies, betrayal, and revenge. I didn't turn back. I didn't need to. I knew he would remain standing there in the shadows, watching me walk toward a light he could never reach again. That was enough. 3 days later, on a plane back to New York, Alex was working on some documents. I was flipping through an art magazine. Are you sure you don't want to go to that awards ceremony? Alex asked. You'll be there on behalf of Ashworth Global, I smiled. And I have a meeting with an old silk artisan. I'm looking for inspiration for the new collection. After leaving the Sterlings, I had returned to design and, with Alex's help, founded my own brand, Anna A. As you wish. Alex didn't insist. By the way, David passed on that the final asset recovery cases are almost complete. The funds will be enough to grow your brand for several years. Tell him thank you, I nodded. And one more thing, Alex hesitated. Eleanor Sterling passed away last month. In a nursing home. Quietly. There's no one left of the Sterling family. My fingers froze for a moment. Then I said softly, I see. Another symbol of the past, gone. And Jessica? I asked out of pure curiosity. She moved back to her hometown with the child. Lives a very modest life, they say. Modest. For someone who dreamed of luxury, that was probably the worst punishment. The plane began its descent. The familiar skyline of the city appeared below. This city, which had been my prison for 5 years and the stage for my revenge, now looked different. It was simply a turned page in my life. The plane landed. I walked out into the brightly lit, bustling arrivals hall. No one knew who I was or what storm I had unleashed here. I was just one of thousands of travelers. But I knew that the Anna standing here now and the one who had flown away a year ago with a suitcase and a scorched soul were two different people. I was no longer an appendage to anyone. I was just myself, Anna Ashworth. There was no shadow of Michael Sterling in my world anymore. Ahead, there was only my own, boundless road.